Hi guys, hope you're having a great day. I did this sketch in Artstudio Pro and I was wondering, is Artstudio Pro the best drawing app on the iPad? I've already imported a photo into the reference image. I'm going to sketch this picture of the bass player from the Seth Lakeman band. It isn't me, although it could be. We're about the same weight, I'm guessing. But what I'm doing now, I'm opening up a new layer and importing a texture for the background. I wanted a textured paper on this one. So I've imported the paper. You can see I've actually got the iPad on my lap. I'm sort of sketching in a very casual manner here, actually. So the paper is now imported. It took quite a while because it was a big file. I then changed the blend mode to multiply. See, I'm doing that now. Once I've done that, I change the opacity and I knock that down to about 50%, something like that. Not too accurate at that, but about in the middle somewhere, just so that I felt the texture of the paper I was using was a bit too fierce. So I've knocked that back, and then I colour the background a nice ochre colour. I'm using a sketchy brush called the Shading Kohl brush for this one, and you can see it puts on this sort of charcoal type effect if you use it as a large brush. But I discovered that if I knock the size down to about 50%, it made a really nice sketching brush, like a soft pencil. So I decided to use that. So I'm using this Shading Kohl brush as a pencil, and it looked really natural. It gave me a real natural pencil look. So I went with that. And I'm just loving Artstudio Pro for sketching. It's this reference window has made all the difference because I can get an image in there. I can quickly zoom in to look at detail. It's so good. In fact, it's so good. I've said in the title for this video, I've called it, is Artstudio Pro the best sketching app on the iPad, or something along those lines? Because I'm beginning to think it is. When I say sketching app, I mean if you're sketching from source material like photos, and if you're doing sort of traditional sketching, I'm not saying it's the best for comic work or anything like that, but for my style of sketching, it is becoming my favourite sketching app. Not necessarily painting app, but I'm just loving it for sketching. And it's taking my sketching to a new level where I'm doing much more detailed drawings. I'm just finding I'm not particularly setting out to do more detailed drawings, but it's just how it's working out because of the reference window and everything. It's just encouraging me to do that more detailed work. So as you can see, I sketched in the rough shape or angles. I began by putting in lines for the main angles, like the angle of his arm, the angle of the neck of the double bass, the angle of the body of the bass, and so on, until I'd got all the proportions pretty much in place. And this way of sketching, it's definitely working for me because I'm doing way less resizing and moving things about. If I want to change something, I'll just erase it. And this sketch isn't all done on one layer. Obviously, I've got the paper texture on one layer and the backgrounds on a layer, but I do all of the initial drawing on one layer. And when I get to the white, I put some white in it. I use a different layer for that. And I'm using a colour palette as well. I don't normally use a colour palette. You can see there I've got a really limited colour of some sort of earthy looking colours. And I wanted this sketch to be similar to, if you've ever looked at sort of sketches from the 16th century and 17th century, the draw on this sort of ochre coloured paper with I'm not saying red, but very earthy looking, red earthy looking pencils or drawing materials, and then put a few highlights in. So that's what I've decided to try and do with this one, just as a little experiment really. So I've got the main drawing in, and now I'm doing some hatching, and straight away I think, right, and my palette hasn't got enough colours in it. So I've slowed this down so you can see what I'm doing. I swap the colours to the HSL sliders, select a nice warm red. Obviously it's warm because it's red. I choose the colour editor, and then I click on the little plus and add new colour, and that's added to my palette. And then I can go to view colour editors, or sorry, colour tables or whatever it's called, and then put my colour toolbars, I think it is, and then put my custom palette back on there. So there we go. I can now jump between those colours really easy. So it's like having a set of earthy coloured pencils really to draw with. So I can do some hatching with that nice red that I've just made, which looks really nice on that ochre, and start shading in. And you can see I can quickly swap back between the brown I was using and that new red colour. And you can see I've got some nice darks, so I can go in with some dark tones in a bit, and I've got the white to put in some nice highlights. So using the custom palette for the first time in Artstudio Pro, really like that, especially with drawing, because I can just set up a nice palette with just a few colours. And the colour for the background is also selected from that palette. It's this sort of ochre looking colour. So if I wanted to sort of do some hatching over the top of it to match the background colour, I can. I was going to use, I initially thought I would use the pencil, the shading coal as a shader, and sort of put in all of that smoke that's in the background of the photo with it. But I got into doing the pencil work, and I thought I did try the shading at one point, and it just wasn't fitting in with the drawing that I'd done. Here we go. I tried it there and I just didn't like it. So I decided to go in with hatching instead, just to keep it looking as it fits in with the rest of the drawing. You notice I've moved the microphone as well slightly, so it's not obscuring his face. I felt that needed to be moved out of the way. At this point, I think I'm back on the table sketching. So I got cramp in my leg actually, and I had to move back to the table and a comfier chair to finish the drawing after I'd done the initial line work. So I'm going in with the shading, and I'm just sort of putting bits of red in, then going darker. And then I've decided to try and put some features on his face, and they just weren't working. I've got his glasses way too far across the side of his face. So I rubbed them out and tried to hatch over it, and that's a mess. So then I had to erase that again, and then just start the shading again. And it's at that point I realised that his glasses were just way too far over. And I decided to go for a very loose looking face with no real detail there. So you see I've just created a new layer for the white to go in. And at first I thought that I'd made the white too strong. So I knocked it back a bit and started working over the drawing with this white tone, but sort of very light pressure on the pencil. A bit later on, I felt that in actual fact, it needed to be stronger because it wasn't popping at all. It looked very flat and it needed some stronger highlights going in. I think this is the first time I've ever done a drawing like this, using a real limited palette of, how many pencils we got? 3, 4, 5,
this 7 there, but I didn't use the black. I felt that the black would be just too much. So the darkest colour I went with the really dark brown. So I used all of the 6 pencils apart from the black. And the first time I've tried this, so I've sort of done pastel work on coloured paper, sort of traditional pastel work and digital pastel work. But I'm not so sure I've ever done pencil drawings. I've done drawings where I've airbrushed colour or backgrounds onto the paper, but I don't think I've sort of just blocked out the colour of the paper with a colour for a drawing and put a texture on it as well to get a real sort of natural looking traditional sketch going. And it felt just like drawing in a sketchbook, really, apart from the fact that I've got my reference right next to me. So it was really easy to see. I really do like Artstudio Pro. It's growing on me. I'm getting more familiar with it. I'm still not quite okay with all of the sort of different layers that you can get, the masking layers. I haven't sort of played around with them much, really, just because at the minute I'm really trying to draw in a very traditional way, and I'm steering away from lots of different layers and things if I can help it. So I just go in with some stronger highlights. I felt that it was looking a bit flat and I wanted to really make it pop. So I'm going in there and just putting in some really strong white, and then I will go over and put a few more darks in. But the question was, is Artstudio Pro the best drawing app? Well, for me, the answer is yes, it is. It leads the way by a mile. It's got some excellent brushes. I'm loving the reference window. I think that's the deal breaker for me. That's what makes it so good. It's streets ahead of Artrage. It's on a par with Procreate. If Procreate had this reference window in it, it might be a different story. But what do you think? What's your favourite drawing app? I'd love to know your opinions on this and on which app you prefer. Stick it in the comments below, and we can find out what everybody else likes. So that's it. That is the end of my sketching of a bass player in Artstudio Pro. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up as always is much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I have lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.